Welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be comparing my X100V with my X-T3. The other day I had a shoot planned with Router, but to be honest I just couldn't be bothered to shoot film on the day. And it'd been a really long time since I last shot my X-T3 as a photo camera. Before I started shooting predominantly film, I was shooting the X-T3 almost purely for photo. I missed shooting with the X-T3 for photos. The 35mm f2 with the X-T3 is honestly one of my all-time favorite combinations because it's so compact, it's got that fast aperture and that 50mm, and I thought to myself, you know what, this would actually be a really good time to compare the two, the X-T3 and the X100V, in terms of like the shooting experience. And this was sort of the whole point why I got the X100V. It was to sort of have it to be shot alongside the X-T3 anyway, because my two favorite focal lengths for pretty much everything, whether it be for street, whether it be for portraits, is 35mm and 50mm. Do I actually prefer the X-T3 to shoot my digital work, or do I actually prefer the X100V to shoot my digital work? So just a bit of context, just a bit of background, my settings. The portrait shots that I took on the X-T3 were shot on Eterna. So I think most Fuji shooters will shoot JPEG and RAW sort of simultaneously. They'll have two copies of each photo, and I do the same, but honestly, I can't remember the last time I edited a RAW file from Fuji, because I can't. It was probably like 6 months ago, and ever since then, like I just don't feel the need to do anything to the JPEGs, to the sort of built-in film simulations. If I do, it's always just a very minor tweak, and that's what I did with the X-T3 JPEG files. I shot them all in Eterna, and I only did a few minor tweaks. I sort of adjusted the temperature, added a bit more warmth, adjusted the blacks, made them a bit punchier, and sort of added a bit more contrast, and that's literally it. Really fine tweaks. For the X100V shots, again, they're all JPEGs. They were all shot on the color negative film simulation. Again, I just love the colors that the film simulations provide. Like, I just don't feel the need to actually touch the raw files. Again, the JPEGs from the X100V were just very lightly edited, not that much done to it, just a bit more contrast added, lifted the shadows up in those shots that were taken in the shade, and that's about it. So in terms of how the shoot went, I tried to utilize the surroundings as best as I could, and the reason why I chose South Bank that day for a shoot was because, one, I had a meeting just beforehand in South Bank, but two, South Bank is actually a really cool sort of location to shoot at just in general, because you've got these cool brutalist architecture, you've got these crazy sort of geometric lines, nice shadows that appear, geometric shadows that appear when the sun hits, but also you've got these bright accents of yellow all over the place. So you have like this bright yellow stairwell, you've got these yellow fences. So obviously I wanted to incorporate those colors into the compositions. They provide really nice striking backgrounds. So I started off the shoot with the X-T3 with a 35mm f2. Even though I haven't shot with the X-T3 as a photo camera, it just felt like muscle memory. I shot with it exclusively for many months, before I switched over to predominantly my Canon A1 and my other film cameras to shoot my stills. But it still felt really comfortable. It felt like, it felt like riding a bike. classic sort of beauty shots. Don't really go too crazy with the poses. You know, I love how the X-T3 is still really compact, still really light, fits really nicely in the hand. So after I got a couple of shots with the X-T3, I thought I'd switch over to the X100V and get some wider, more environmental portraits, sort of incorporate the environment a bit more. This is where I sort of felt the difference between the cameras, and that is sort of the viewfinder. Immediately, what I found was that, I don't know what it is about the viewfinder in the X100V, maybe it's the placement of it being to the left of the camera. I just feel that the X100V's viewfinder is just not, I don't know what it is, I just don't feel as comfortable using it as opposed to the X-T3. Even though I've been shooting the X100V a lot more recently than the X-T3, I just felt so much more comfortable using the viewfinder in the X-T3. I don't know if it's the resolution's a bit better in the X-T3 viewfinder, or the placement of it, you know, being that it's in the center of the camera. Not saying that it's completely unusable or like or that it's a bad viewfinder. I'm just saying, me preferentially, in terms of my preferences, I just prefer the viewfinder in the X-T3. And it's just these little things, you know, if you shoot a lot of photos, if you shoot a lot of content, these little things, these little small margins make a big difference, I think, in, you know, in terms of your decisions of whether or not you want to use something. In terms of the autofocus, as I said before, I think I've said this in my previous videos, the autofocus in the X100V, I feel is just a touch slower than that of the X-T3. Not saying that it's bad, it's just a touch slower, not enough for me to make an issue about it. But yeah, the X-T3's autofocus is just a bit snappier, a bit faster. I actually really liked shooting these two alongside each other. I know it seems like a bit overkill to have two photo cameras with you for one shoot. It's nice having a camera, a backup camera to the X-T3 that had a focal length that I use very often. You know, the 35mm equivalent is a focal length that I use very often. So it was nice, and not having to switch out lenses between the on the X-T3 is also just kind of nice. Of course, having two digital cameras is it's just a luxury. It's not an essential. You know, obviously it's not gonna, you know, not everyone's gonna want to have two cameras with them. Like, you know, that's another extra body to carry. But, you know, obviously the X100V is such a small such a small form factor that it's not an issue. You know, obviously some people would just prefer having two lenses for the X-T3. They'll just have the 23 and the 35mm. But as I said before, the X100V, it's not just about having two lenses, two focal lengths. It's also about having a backup camera. It's also a street photography camera for me, whilst I leave the X-T3 in its cage at home. You know, for me, it's still one of my favorite cameras to shoot as a photo camera, and it's just, I just miss shooting it as a photo camera. All in all, which one do I prefer shooting? I think in terms of shooting and in terms of ergonomics and sort of like, I would still have to give it to the X-T3. I just prefer it. I don't know why, it just feels a bit nice in my hands. That 35mm f2, obviously preferentially, I just prefer shooting a 50mm focal length. You know, you can get a teleconverter for the X100V, and that would give you a 50mm focal length, but you know, that would defeat the point of using this camera as a 50mm. You know, I got this camera because I want to shoot 35mm on this. This is getting confusing, all this 35mm. And one of the biggest things that I miss when I'm using the X100V is the fact that you can tilt the screen upwards in portrait mode on the XT3. In the X100V, you can only tilt it up in landscape mode. So, and basically when I'm shooting portraits, I like to get those low angles, and the fact that it tilts up this way makes it so much easier. Overall, like I'm just a bit quicker on the XT3 because of the viewfinder. I'm just a bit quicker because of the autofocus. Yeah, so what it comes down to really is just way it feels in my hands and that slightly better autofocus. Because in terms of color science, you know, it's exactly the same. It's the same sensor, so you're going to get the same colors. I use a color negative film simulation on the X100V because that's not available on the XT3, but I use Eterna on the XT3 because I think Eterna is probably my favorite alongside color negative. So shooting Eterna on the XT3 and color negative on this one is just sort of like it's a nice sort of balance for me. Going forward, if I were to do this again, I think, yeah, I would do it because they actually complemented each other really nicely. Yeah, even though I was shooting two different film simulations, you know, the Eterna on the XT3 and the color negative on the X100V, I still feel like they, you know, when I put the photos side by side, I feel like the colors still complement each other quite nicely. They didn't look too different. It didn't look like they were two completely different shoots. You know, they still give me, it was just kind of nice having those two different options. Between these two focal lengths from the XT3, the 35mm f2 and the 23 f2 on the X100V, I'm getting a really nice range. You know, I can get nice environmental portraits where I get the, you know, the subject and the environment quite nicely, but I also get that, you know, a bit more intimate portraits, like, you know, with the XT3. A bit more close-up, intimate shots there. I only really shoot two focal lengths, so and not having to switch out lenses it was quite nice. And also mid-shoot, it was quite nice looking forward to shooting the X100V, because for me sometimes just shooting one camera or shooting one focal length can make the shoot feel a bit stale for me. It gets a bit monotonous, so just having something to look forward to mid-shoot, being like, oh yes, now I get to shoot the X100V. It just gives me something to look forward to, and it just gives me you know, a moment to sort of get uncomfortable and sort of, you know, shake things up a bit, and then I have to, you know, sort of readjust my framing, everything. It just keeps it fresh for me, and it makes the shots a bit more interesting because I'm having to sort of readjust mid-shoot, compositionally and all that. Yeah, so all in all, I think they work really well together. They complement each other really well. They work nicely together in terms of my workflow and in terms of how I like to shoot. Yeah, so thanks for watching the whole video, if you made it to the end of the video. I just wanted to say something about my Instagram. Don't know what the frick is happening with my Instagram, but for some reason Instagram has decided to disable my account for some reason. I have no idea. That I just literally just got this message here. Can't get back into it. I can't access it. So yeah, hopefully it gets sorted out soon. Yeah, so if you try to follow me, try to see what any of my stuff on Instagram, that's the reason for it. Hope you enjoyed that one. Hope you enjoyed the photos. Did you have a favorite photo? Plenty more videos to come. Comment something nice down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, guys. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you were deciding between, you know, which one to get, the XT3, an interchangeable lens camera from Fuji, or a fixed lens camera from Fuji, I hope this video somewhat helped you make that decision. Plenty more videos to come. Hope you enjoyed that. Like, comment, share. Keep learning, keep shooting. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.